Okay, here is another video. This is going to be another really niche one, more so than the last ones have been. I know this one's not going to get a ton of views, but that's all right. I have already accounted for that. That's fine. Remember, we don't do this for the views. We do this because we can, right? And also because there is nobody in this world who could hope to stop us. So, today we are going to be doing a bit of a character sheet, a D&D character sheet for Vertin. We're going to be using the 5e system. I was thinking about doing 3.5, which is, a little bit more robust, significantly more robust, lots more detail. But if you have seen any of my other videos, it's pretty clear that anytime we get really into the detail, I tend to fumble things. So for the sake of myself, we are going to be doing 5e. It's short, it's simple, it's very easy to understand, very cool. But yeah, so for Vertin, let's go ahead and just get the stats out of the way real quick, right? So, for our stats, so right from the top, we have our strength stat at a 10, which is going to give us a modifier of 0. Now, we don't really have any reason to believe that Vertin's, physical strength is any, more than it should be, considering her, frame and her build. She hasn't really shown any reason for us to believe that she's hiding some secret strength, so a 0 seems perfectly appropriate, right? Her dexterity and her constitution. Now, these two are things that I think are a little bit interchangeable for, lore purposes, right? Because they are rather high up there, right? A 15 in dexterity gives us a 2 for the modifier, a constitution gives us a 1. And despite her appearance, Vertin is surprisingly robust, right? She's able to fight Schneider. Granted, Schneider's probably taking it easy on her, but she is able to hold her own in that fight. After that, she is also able to hold off the Manus grunts up until, Druvis comes in and just rocks their shit. And, in the orange scene, she tanks a bunch of bullets. So the first two, you can make a case for that being dexterity, right? She's jumping around, she's avoiding the shots, avoiding the hits, and landing hits where she can. The gunshots, those are just bullets, man. That's just a straight constitution thing. You can't just tank that and say, hey, dexterity, right? So, like I said, it's kind of back and forth between them. Now, we are going to be rolling a bard. So in terms of optimization, you do want them at the points in dexterity. But in terms of lore, I think constitution actually wins out this one, right? Which, not super great for us in terms of optimization, but I don't think it's too terribly hindering. You lose a point in the modifier, which isn't great, but hey, you do what you gotta do, right? But for the most part, I would say this is up to your own interpretation. You could do dexterity and play it off that way. I think it's perfectly fine. Next are our intelligence and our wisdom stats. Now, Vertin herself mentions that she is not good at Arcanum, and intelligence and wisdom are going to be the primary spellcasting stats for, say, a wizard, and I believe a sorcerer. Sorcerer might use charisma. I'm very hazy on that. Regardless, these are going to be the stats that get kind of dumped, right? Intelligence is an 8 with a modifier of -1, and then wisdom is a 10 with a modifier of 0. Primarily because Vertin isn't necessarily stupid, she's just not good at magic. So I think wisdom at a 0 is fine. Intelligence, she skipped class a bunch, right? In terms of book smart, she may not be super up there. So yeah, that's that. And charisma is a 15. Of course charisma is a 15. Come on. Of course it's a 15. I don't even need to explain that one. But yeah, those are the base stats. Now, as for race, right, I have unilaterally and, definitively decided that arcanists are elves and humans are, humans, right? And Vertin being a, mixed species sort of deal is going to be a half elf. so let's go ahead and throw half elf here in the thingy. Where the hell is it? There it is. So being a half elf, she gets this really, really neat racial trait where her dexterity stat goes up by 2, and you can pick 2 other ability scores to put a point into. Now again, we're just going to be putting that into dexterity and constitution, both to keep us alive as a bard, and also just because, why is she so tanky? I don't know, that's just how they made her, right? Beyond just stat buffs, I think that's all we need for the charisma, right? Yeah, it is. Okay. Jesus Christ, please. So let's go back there. Okay, so as far as a half-elf goes, right? It does give us a little extra stuff. I don't think any of it is super, necessary for lore purposes, right? Like, it gives us dark vision, which lets you see in the dark, surprise. Which Vertin doesn't have, or at least not more than any regular human would. So that's not super canon, a super canon thing. That's fine. And she does have it. She should have advantage against being charmed and having magic put you to sleep. But clearly that was not applying in the whole Arcana deal. On top of that, we get skill versatility, which gives us proficiency in 2 skills of our choice. Now you could put those points into excuse me, into performance and persuasion. However, we do get to put points in those later on down the line for our build. So instead, you can put these in like any other appropriate stats. I opted to put them into perception and investigation because she just seems like she'd be good at that sort of thing, right? Like noticing things. So I threw those in there. And she knows common and another language of her choice. I don't believe she actually knows another language in canon. We can just forgo having that. Or throw in whatever you want. It's your build. You can do whatever you want. Yeah. Okay. Now, in terms of her background, right? I have opted to go for the urchin background. Now, the urchin background is characterized by, being an orphan and being alone on the streets. And while she isn't alone on the streets, and technically, I guess not an orphan, she has a mother, surprisingly, she was left to the Foundation, which means I think urchin still kind of fits. In terms of stats, we don't really get anything too important here. We get skill proficiencies in sleight of hand and stealth, not something super useful for us, and tool proficiencies in disguise kit and thieves tool. Again, nothing too important for us. We get a couple of equipment, and that's okay. Nothing. I feel like I said it already. Nothing too important for us. But besides that, we do get a feature called City Secrets. It states that we know where the secret patterns and flow to the cities are, and in order to get from one point to another in our, domain, we can travel twice as quickly as our speed would normally allow. And I think this actually fits, right? Because in chapter 3 of the story, we do have a point where she's using the tunnels beneath the school to escape, which she didn't escape. But that's all for the background. Now, to get to the real meat of it, we are going to be making a bard. So as a bard, right, we get a bunch of cool stuff that we can make use of. And a lot of it, or at least a good amount of it, is somewhat pertinent to our, character's lore, right? Right off the bat, we get 3 skill proficiencies of our choice. So this is the one where we're going to be putting points into, for sure, persuasion and performance. I think those are probably the 2. They're both charisma stats, and they're probably the 2 ones we'd probably be using most often, right? The last one is kind of up in the air. I was toying with the idea of putting it into intimidation as another charisma check, but Vertin doesn't really go with the intimidation angle, so I didn't really think it fit. Again, this is one of those things where you could just sort of look at it and kind of decide what fits the best. Personally, I actually just threw it into athletics. Just because, again, she has this really really out of place physicality, you know, robustness, despite her appearance. You could also throw it into animal handling, I guess, for when she kind of rizzed up Jessica in Green Lake. Again, this is mostly up to preference. It probably won't play a huge role because these are both stats. You know, athletics is a strength check. Animal handling is a wisdom check, both of which you're not exactly rolling super high on regardless. So this one, you could throw it wherever. The third point doesn't really matter super a lot, right? In terms of other proficiencies, you have armor, light proficiency in light armor, right? I mean, she doesn't wear armor. She wears a suit, man. You could make a argument that is padded armor, which means she's going to get an 11 to her armor class, on top of her dexterity, of course, which I believe should put her at a 13, I think, for armor class. Regardless, you don't want to be getting hit anyway, so what the heck. In terms of weapons, she knows how to use simple weapons, hand crossbows, long swords, rapiers, and short swords. We have never actually seen her fight with our, we've never actually seen how she fights. We do know that she's a particularly good shot. So hand crossbows you could use, and still be like somewhat canon compliant, right? But I doubt she's going to be fighting like on the front lines at all. And if she does, she's probably just throwing hands. So there you go. You also get proficiency in 3 musical instruments of your choice. She's got a piano in the suitcase, so I'm going to give her piano just baseline. The other 2, I don't know. Honestly, throw in whatever you want for that one. She hasn't really shown any, you know, particular affinity towards any other instruments. The piano is the only one we really see, so that's the one you want to stick with. The other 2, do whatever you like. She gets saving throws in dexterity, charisma again. Like, that just fits, right? But beyond that, those are just like your base stats, right? Now, at first level, we get to take 2 cantrips and up to, I believe it is 4 first level spells. The first level spells do not matter. Again, it's mostly up to taste, but Vertin can't do magic, or at least she can't do magic well, right? So what you're gonna want to be taking is stuff that you can kind of just pass off as being good at, you know, talking and getting what you want that way, right? So as far as her first level spell slots go, we are gonna take Charm Person because, you know, charming people, Animal Friendship, and Speak with Animals. These 2 are kind of a bit less great, the last 2, but they work. Now, I will be building her up to 5th level for a very particular reason, so we won't be taking the 4th, train of thought, dear lord. The 4th spell, right? Because we're going to be allocating those later. Bards allow you to switch out your bard spells as you level up. As far as her cantrips go, we get Blade Ward because, again, this just serves to make her even beefier. Yes, hello, editing me here. I probably should have mentioned this at the start. I thought it might be implied, but I figure might as well just say it now. This is not going to be optimized at all, right? Blade Ward is a garbage tier cantrip. It's here for the flavor. This is going to be a flavor build. It's not going to be a useless build, but it certainly will not be optimized. Okay, that's all I want to say. Back to the video. For what reason, I don't know. Vicious Mockery, because I mean, little Vertin was kind of a little shit, right? Like, she was a little snarky. So yeah, Vicious Mockery. And also, she can't really do much more than talk anyways, and this is like the bard's primary thing, so like, you gotta take that regardless. Right, beyond spells, let's see here. Right, you get Bardic Inspiration. This is just, like, you could play this as you giving your people a pep talk, which is great, right? Like, that's fine, that works. Now, at 2nd level, right, you get Jack of All Trades and Song of Rest. Jack of all trades is allows you to take two options. Sorry, no, I'm thinking about the wrong one. Jack of all trades is saying that you can add half of your proficiency to a check that you don't already have proficiency in, which means all of your stuff gets like minorly boosted as long as you don't already have proficiency in it. Song of Rest just lets you heal your people a little bit more after every fight, or I guess when you do a short rest. That's fine. It doesn't matter. At third level, you get Expertise. Now, Expertise is a fun one, right? Because with Expertise, you can choose two skills rather, and have it so that when you make a check with those skills, your proficiency for them is actually doubled. So for this one, of course, you pick Persuasion and Performance. These are going to be your bread and butter. You want these to be pumped up as high as possible so you're not just failing every roll, right? Which means anytime you make a Persuasion roll or a Performance roll, you will be doubling the amount of proficiency you add to that roll. It's a very cool thing. I think it's neat. On top of that, we get to choose a Bard College, which is kind of just like it's more granular, right? It lets you focus your character down more on a very specific path. Now, up until this point, we have been just sort of taking things from the player's handbook. However, for this part, I actually want to move over to Xanathar's Guide to Everything, because there's a very specific college in there that I think fits Vertin very well. And that college is the College of Glamour. Now, the College of Glamour are for people who perform just super well. Their performance, kind of just borders on the level of the divine at that point, right? But this is just for people who have just incalculable amounts of Riz, which, Vertin, right? I figured it fit. At third level, you get Mantle of Inspiration. This thing will allow you to give your allies more health, and on top of that, it will allow them to make a reaction and run away, basically, without incurring any sort of opportunity attack. At third level, you also get Enthralling Performance as part of the College of Glamour. And this one's a fun one, right? Because this one is going to let you basically charm any number of people up to your charisma modifier in your general vicinity, 60 feet. And if you succeed in charming them, they will just talk you up constantly. They will say great things about you. They will oppose people who do not like you. You basically turn a bunch of people into your simps, and I think that's funny. And I think it's appropriate for Vertin. So that's a nice thing I have. But as far as the College of Glamour goes, that's pretty much everything we get for that. At least up till 5th level, which is, as I said, what we're building her to. I believe in terms of just stuff, right, that is all. Now, when we focus on our level ups, so currently we'd be at 2nd level. At 3rd level, we're at 3rd level right now. At 4th level, you get an ability score improvement. You can also choose to take a feature. And for this one, we will be opting to take a feature. The feature we're going to be taking is Inspiring Leader. This one is more of just purely a lore thing. Like, she is the leader, right? She calls the shots. Also, this does buff your party, which in terms of, again, lore, but also in terms of actual utility, this is fantastic, right? Basically, you buff people's health with this thing, and no, you basically just buff people's health with it. I also forgot to mention that starting at 2nd level, right, you get to starting at 3rd level, you get to start picking 2nd level spells. And at this point, you're able to have a total of 6 spells known. So, right now, where's the sheet? Right now, right, we have 3 spells. In Charm Person for 1st level, Animal Friendship, and Speak with Animals as 1st level spells. For our 2nd level spells, we take Calm Emotions and 3, 4, 5 Enhance Ability, and then whatever you want after that. I gave her lesser restoration because, I mean, we can use potions to heal people. It's fine. You heal people. It's okay. But as far as spells, again, spells are kind of flexible. You can just do whatever you want for them. It's a bit rough just because Vertin acknowledges that she can actually use magic as a, like, damn, man, come on. But beyond that, that's our levels 1 through 4, right? 5th level is the important one, I think, for us. Because at 5th level, our bardic inspiration increases. That's fine. Font of inspiration. What is this thing? Doesn't matter. You gain all your bardic inspirations back at every short rest. That's fine. But the important part for 5th level is that you can now use 3rd level spells from the bard class. And one specific 3rd level spell is Liamin's Tiny Hut, right? Liamin's Tiny Hut is basically you spend time to conjure up a hut, an invisible hut. It's invisible from the inside, so you can actually see around you. But it's a hut that is impenetrable from the outside and is basically just a free little shelter. And this is basically just going to be our suitcase, right? This thing lasts 8 hours, and yeah, this is the only reason we went to 5th level, just because I wanted to give her this spell because I thought it was appropriate. Now you could have her go past 5th level. Personally, I thought that 5th might be a little too much, right? Because at 5th level, you're talking about something of a seasoned, maybe not a seasoned veteran, but like a grown adult who has some experience under their belt in terms of like combat, which means like Vertin's still a child, right? The thing about that, right, is that she also has magic, no matter how like shitty it is. So maybe it evens out. I don't know. Anything after 5th level is going to be hard to justify, like lore wise, right? But if you actually plan on rolling this character, eventually you're going to get to that point. So yeah, you can always just add more stuff as that goes on. The problem is, I mean, not a problem, but you're going to have harder and harder times finding spells that will actually like fit her lore wise as you go up, you know, because the spells get stronger and she can't do strong spells. But again, this is your, however you choose to interpret it. So yeah, I believe that's actually everything, at least till 5th level. As far as spells go, again, pick what you want. I think Tiny Hut and Charm Person are probably the 2 most important ones to consider, just because they fit the character so well. But besides that, you're pretty flexible in your choices. But yeah, that was something, wasn't it? In terms of how this would play, I think it's actually solid, right? You're not taking stats outside of what the class actually wants, unless you decide to take Constitution, but even then it's not a super big downside because Dexterity is still fairly up there, right? In terms of combat, you're gonna have a rough time, because if you're just opting to go with unarmed strikes, you know, throwing hands, that you're doing 1 damage every time, assuming you make the hit. If you are opting for using crossbow, you might have a little bit of a better time, but crossbow's kind of iffy, right? Because while she can shoot, she never actually does in the story, aside from, you know, when she's brainwashed. She certainly doesn't do it regularly, right? But as a bard, I mean, you're probably going to be spending, at least with this build, right? You're going to be spending your combats basically as a glorified cheerleader, which isn't too far off of what bards do anyways. So you're basically just spending your combats buffing people and doing stuff to be a general nuisance, right? But in terms of roleplay, a +9 to persuasion, or not, sorry, +9. Well, I guess at 5th level, you will have a +9 to persuasion and a +9 to performance. which, if that doesn't get you through most social interactions, you gotta get rid of those dice, man. Those dice are cursed at that point. But yeah, that is the character sheet. I think I'll throw the PDF down in the description below. Assuming I figure out how to do that. I don't think I can just link a file. I believe I can't just link a file. I'll figure it out. It's fine. Doesn't matter. But yeah, that's the character sheet. Let me know what you think. And thank you for watching. I will see you later. Bye-bye.